Real estate never fails. Good luck. I hit send on the text message, my finger steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. For the first time in months, the tremor that had become a constant, low-grade hum in my soul finally stilled. It was replaced by something else, something cold and sharp and infinitely more satisfying. It was the feeling of a perfectly executed checkmate. 20 minutes earlier, my world had been pristine, orderly, and meticulously managed, just like the gleaming white quartz countertops of my kitchen. I was reconciling our investment statements, a ritual I performed with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. Our retirement accounts, our emergency fund, the equity in our home, I tracked it all. Darren, my husband of 15 years, used to call me the brain behind our success, back when he still respected what I brought to our marriage. That respect, I now understood, had been eroding for months, dissolving like sugar in water, so slowly, I almost didn't notice until it was gone completely. My phone buzzed on the counter, a jarring intrusion into the quiet afternoon. It was Darren. He was supposed to be on a hunting weekend in Santa Fe with his buddies from Trevanta Corporation. A real man's weekend, he'd called it, with an almost manic excitement that had felt off. Miss you, babe. Can't wait to come home and share all the hunting stories. I smiled, a hollow gesture. Another text followed immediately. It was a screenshot of a wire transfer confirmation. My breath hitched. Then, the message that detonated 15 years of careful financial planning, of shared dreams, of a life I thought was built on a bedrock of trust. Moved our savings to Sky's real estate venture. She's ambitious, unlike you. We're going to flip houses together. The audacity was breathtaking. Not just the betrayal, the sheer, unadulterated stupidity of it. To put our entire life savings, every dollar I had painstakingly saved and invested, every safety net I had woven for our future, into some half-baked real estate scheme with his girlfriend. His 28-year-old girlfriend, Sky Winters. The phone felt impossibly heavy in my hand. The text message glowed with a malevolent light, burning its words into my retinas. Ambitious, unlike you. The casual cruelty of it, the dismissal of 15 years of my life, my work, my contribution, it was a second, more vicious blow. I had been the financial backbone of our household here in Tucson, Arizona. While Darren played the charming salesman, I was the one who turned his sporadic, flashy commissions into long-term wealth. I was the one with the master's in finance, the one who understood compound interest and diversified portfolios. He was brilliant at making money, but terrible at managing it. Left to his own devices, he would have spent every penny on the latest gadgets, luxury vacations, and whatever else caught his fancy. I was the strategist, the one who built our financial empire one careful, conservative decision at a time. And now, I was just the boring wife, holding him back. I sank onto a kitchen stool, the cool metal a stark contrast to the fire raging through my veins. The initial shock, the gut-wrenching pain of his infidelity, was quickly being consumed by a cold, calculating fury. He thought he had me. He thought I was just the quiet, unassuming woman who managed the spreadsheets. He had forgotten who I was before him, the woman who graduated top of her class, the woman who could dissect a corporate balance sheet with surgical precision. He had forgotten that I wasn't just good with money. I was excellent with revenge. The warning signs had been there, of course. Late nights at the office that smelled of a cheap, cloying perfume instead of his usual cologne. Weekend hunting trips that, with a little surreptitious digging on my part, coincidentally aligned with Sky's out-of-town property visits. His increasing criticism of my conservative approach to money. "We need to think bigger, Ronnie," he'd started saying, a phrase that sounded rehearsed, foreign on his lips. "Take some risks." I had ignored them all, foolishly believing that 15 years of marriage and shared success meant something. Now, staring at his text message on my phone screen, I realized just how naive I'd been. But my naivete ended today. Something cold and calculating settled in my chest, a feeling I hadn't experienced since my days on the competitive debate team in college. It was the thrill of a complex problem, the anticipation of a winning strategy. Darren had made one critical mistake in his grand betrayal. He'd forgotten that I wasn't just good with money. I was good with contracts, documentation, and the kind of legal paperwork that could protect us from exactly this scenario. Years ago, I'd insisted we both sign documents giving each other co-control over major financial decisions. Any transfer over $10,000 required both our signatures. At the time, Darren had joked that I was being paranoid. Today, that paranoia was about to save my life and destroy his. But it wasn't just the co-control agreement. 6 months ago, after hearing one too many stories from friends getting blindsided by cheating spouses, I'd done something that Darren had mocked as the height of paranoia. I'd consulted with Judith Brennan, one of the most ruthless divorce attorneys in Tucson. Not because I suspected anything specific, but because I believed in being prepared for every possible scenario. Darren had laughed when I'd told him about the consultation fee, calling it a waste of money, and joking that I was already planning our divorce. Today, that consultation was about to become the best investment I'd ever made. I walked to our home office, my steps measured and calm. I pulled Judith's card from my home office filing cabinet, tucked away behind our tax documents where Darren would never think to look. As I pulled it out, I remembered her words from that initial meeting. The key to surviving financial infidelity, Judith had said, her eyes sharp and assessing, is moving faster than the cheating spouse expects. Most betrayed partners waste crucial time trying to understand why it happened or hoping for reconciliation. The smart ones protect themselves first and process emotions later. My phone call to Judith was brief and to the point. Judith, this is Veronica Hale. We met 6 months ago for a consultation. A pause, then. I remember you. How much money are we talking about? $87,000 in savings, I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. Plus whatever he can access from our other accounts. Maybe $150,000 total. When did the transfers occur? Thursday afternoon. He's currently in Santa Fe with his girlfriend, pretending to be on a hunting trip. Perfect, Judith said, a hint of predatory satisfaction in her tone. We'll have restraining orders on the remaining accounts by Monday morning. Can you be in my office in an hour? As I grabbed my purse and car keys, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: hope. Judith Brennan's office was exactly what I'd remembered from my consultation 6 months earlier. Impressive but not flashy, with a kind of understated elegance that suggested confidence rather than desperation for clients. Floor-to-ceiling law books lined the walls, and her desk was organized with the precision of someone who'd built a career on attention to detail. She was waiting for me when I arrived, having apparently cleared her Saturday afternoon schedule for what she'd already identified as a priority case. "Show me everything," she said without preamble, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I handed over my phone with Darren's text messages and opened my laptop to display the banking records I'd compiled. I had taken screenshots of our emptied accounts, saved copies of Darren's text messages, and pulled up our banking history to trace exactly when and how the transfers had occurred. What I discovered made my blood run cold. The transactions hadn't happened today, during his supposed hunting trip. They'd been executed on Thursday afternoon, just hours before he'd left for Santa Fe with his overnight bag and hunting gear. He drained our accounts and then lied to my face about going hunting with his friends. The real revelation came when I dug deeper into the transfer details. The money hadn't gone to any legitimate real estate investment company. It had been wired directly to a personal account belonging to Sky Winters, not her business account, not a corporate investment fund. Her personal checking account. Which meant this wasn't even a real business venture. It was either a personal loan to his girlfriend or, more likely, his way of funding their new life together while leaving me with nothing. The level of premeditation was staggering. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision made during a romantic weekend. Darren had been planning this for weeks, maybe months. While I'd been updating our investment spreadsheets and planning our financial future, he'd been systematically preparing to steal everything we'd built together. Judith's expression remained neutral as she reviewed the evidence, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes that suggested she'd seen this type of betrayal before and knew exactly how to respond to it. "Your husband made several critical mistakes," she said after reviewing everything. "First, he documented his intent in writing. These text messages show clear evidence of financial abuse and potentially fraudulent misrepresentation of assets. Second, he transferred marital funds to a third party without your consent, which violates the co-control agreements you signed years ago. And third, he's currently out of state, which gives us a window to act before he can make any additional moves." She pulled out a legal pad and began writing notes with the speed of someone dictating strategy to herself. "Here's what we're going to do. Monday morning, I'll file for emergency relief to freeze all remaining joint accounts. We'll also request a temporary restraining order, preventing him from accessing any marital assets until a court can review the situation. The fact that he transferred money to his girlfriend's personal account rather than a legitimate business entity works strongly in our favor." But it was her next words that made me sit up straighter. "More importantly, we're going to subpoena every financial record related to this so-called real estate venture. If Sky Winters accepted marital funds under false pretenses, if this isn't actually a legitimate business investment, she could be facing civil liability for receiving stolen property." The implications hit me immediately. "You mean she could be legally responsible for returning the money?" "Potentially, yes. And if we can prove she knew the funds were taken without your consent, the penalties become much more severe." Judith's smile was sharp and professional. "I've seen this pattern before. Younger women who get involved with married men often don't understand they're making themselves vulnerable to legal action when they accept money that isn't rightfully theirs." The hunting weekend that was supposed to mark the beginning of his new life with Sky was about to become the biggest mistake he'd ever made. Sunday evening brought the first crack in Darren's carefully constructed narrative. He called just before 8 p.m., his voice artificially cheerful as he described his amazing hunting experience and the huge buck his friend Bradley had supposedly taken down. But I could hear something else underneath the manufactured enthusiasm, a nervous energy, like someone rehearsing a story they weren't entirely confident about. "The guys want to stay another day," he said, the words coming a little too quickly. "Some opportunity to track this elk that the guides think we can find. I might not be back until Tuesday evening." Of course, he wanted to extend his trip. More time with Sky, more time to solidify their plans before facing the consequences of what he'd done. But his transparent lie gave me exactly what I needed: additional time to implement Judith's strategy before he realized what was happening. "That sounds wonderful," I replied, keeping my voice warm and supportive. "Make sure you get some good photos for your social media. I know how much you enjoy sharing your adventures." The pause that followed told me everything I needed to know. Darren had been so focused on creating his hunting alibi that he'd forgotten about the digital trail he'd been leaving. If he'd really been in the mountains with no cell service, how had he been able to send me detailed text messages about real estate investments? And more importantly, what had he actually been posting online while supposedly disconnected from civilization? After hanging up, I spent the evening conducting my own investigation. Darren's social media accounts told a fascinating story. On Thursday, he'd posted a photo of hunting gear laid out on our bed with the caption, "Ready for a real man's weekend in the wilderness." On Friday, there were no posts at all, consistent with being in an area without cell service. But Saturday afternoon, right around the time he'd sent me the devastating text about transferring our savings, he'd posted a photo of an expensive restaurant meal in Santa Fe with the caption, "Sometimes the hunting lodge surprises you with amazing food." A hunting lodge with restaurant-quality plating and what appeared to be lobster tail. I took a screenshot and added it to my growing evidence file. But the real revelation came when I checked Sky's social media accounts. She'd been far less careful about maintaining the fiction. Her Instagram story from Saturday showed a champagne toast with perfectly manicured nails and what looked like an expensive hotel room in the background. The timestamp matched exactly with when Darren had sent me his cruel text messages about their real estate venture. I saved everything: screenshots, timestamps, even the metadata from the photos that would prove where they'd been taken. By the time I finished documenting their weekend, I had a comprehensive record of their deception that would make Darren's hunting trip story completely impossible to maintain. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. I'd spent the weekend moving between fury and calculation, but now I felt something else entirely: the cold satisfaction of having superior information and a better strategy than my opponents. Darren thought he was playing a game where he held all the cards. He'd stolen our money, secured his girlfriend's future, and left me with nothing but broken trust and empty accounts. What he didn't realize was that he'd been playing chess while I'd been preparing for war. At 7 a.m. Monday morning, I was sitting in my car outside Judith's office with a coffee and a folder full of evidence that would turn Darren's triumph into his downfall. My phone buzzed with a text from him. "Miss you, babe. Can't wait to come home and share all the hunting stories." I smiled as I typed my response. "Can't wait to hear every detail. I'm sure it will be fascinating." Within hours, Darren would discover that his boring, conservative wife had been far busier during his hunting weekend than he could have possibly imagined. Judith's Monday morning blitz was a masterpiece of legal precision. By 10 a.m., she'd filed emergency motions with the family court, requesting immediate freeze orders on all our remaining joint accounts. By noon, she'd served Trivanda Corporation with a subpoena demanding all records related to Darren's recent time-off requests and expense reports. By 2 p.m., she'd filed for a temporary restraining order, preventing any further transfers of marital assets. But the real devastation came when she served Sky Winters with a civil lawsuit demanding the immediate return of the $87,000, plus interest and attorney fees. "Your husband's girlfriend just learned that accepting stolen marital funds makes her legally liable for restitution," Judith informed me during our afternoon phone call. "Her real estate venture is about to become very expensive." The speed of Judith's actions caught everyone off guard. Darren was still in Santa Fe, blissfully unaware that his financial world was collapsing. Sky was scrambling to find a lawyer to explain how she'd suddenly become a defendant in a civil lawsuit. And I was discovering that revenge, served efficiently, was infinitely more satisfying than revenge served hot. The first call came from our bank's fraud department, informing me that suspicious activity flags had been placed on all accounts associated with my Social Security number. The second call came from Darren's supervisor at Trivanda Corporation, asking if I knew why their legal department had received subpoenas related to my husband's recent travel expenses. But the most satisfying call came from Bradley Morrison, one of Darren's supposed hunting companions. "Veronica, I'm really confused," he said, his voice uncertain. "Some lawyer's office called, asking about our hunting trip this weekend. But Darren told us weeks ago that he had to cancel because of a family emergency. We went without him. Is everything okay?" "Everything was perfect," I said calmly. Tuesday afternoon brought the first cracks in Darren's composure. He called from the road, supposedly driving back from his successful hunting expedition, but his voice carried an edge of panic that he couldn't quite hide. "Veronica, did you do something with our bank accounts? I tried to access our checking account for gas money, and it's showing some kind of restriction." I let the silence stretch for a moment before responding with carefully calibrated concern. "That's strange. I haven't touched anything. Maybe you should call the bank when you get home. You know how paranoid they've become about unusual activity." "Unusual activity?" His voice pitched higher. "What kind of unusual activity?" "Oh, I don't know," I said, pausing, then adding with perfect innocence, "maybe large transfers or out-of-state transactions. You know how banks are these days. How was the hunting, by the way? Did you get good cell service up in the mountains? Your text messages came through so clearly." The silence that followed told me he was beginning to understand that his weekend of triumph was about to become something very different. When Darren finally arrived home that evening, I was waiting in our living room with a cup of tea and a manila folder. He looked exhausted, and not from hunting. His designer hunting clothes were suspiciously clean for someone who'd supposedly spent 3 days tracking elk through mountain terrain. "We need to talk," he said, dropping his overnight bag by the door. "Yes, we do." I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit down, Darren. Let's discuss your real estate investment strategy. The color drained from his face as he recognized the legal documents spilling out of my folder. His hunting weekend was officially over, and his education in the consequences of financial betrayal was about to begin. As I reflected on the swift and complete dismantling of his plans, I realized that revenge, when executed with precision and intelligence, was indeed a dish best served cold and efficiently. It was then, with the full weight of his betrayal laid bare on the coffee table between us, that I picked up my phone. His eyes followed my every move, a mixture of fear and disbelief dawning on his face. I calmly typed out a new message, the same one I'd been composing in my head for the past 2 days. Real estate never fails, I typed, the words appearing on the screen, a final, cold testament to his folly. Good luck. I hit send, and for the first time in a very long time, I smiled.